Welcome viewers. Life is an amalgamation of facts and fancies. Whatever can be possibly comprehended within the limits and limitations of human logic and reason is a reality, and whatever lies beyond the line is a myth. The subject of mythology has been a constant source of fascination and inspiration for many, because this is the point from where human mind has got evolved. It has got a long history and a longer mystery to it. To understand the same, we have invited a professor of philosophy, Dr. M.H. Zafar. Sir, we welcome you.
Thank
Professor
you.
M.H. Zafar is Director, Kashmir Studies, the University of Kashmir. Sir, we'll begin our discussion with this question, that how does a myth, apparently a very small word, qualify for a full-fledged subject like mythology?
Ejaz Sahab, the word myth comes from the Greek word mythos, and its literal meaning is a narrative, a story, and this meaning is value neutral. In a sense, it does not qualify the story whether it is true or false. But when we go through the literature that is called mythology, retelling or narrating of myths or study of myths, myths have played a very important role, as you yourself said, in the evolution of human mind, in the evolution of human knowledge, in the epistemic evolution of man. But one thing you said, I beg to differ with you, that whatever is beyond the comprehension of logical faculties of human being is myth. So probably you used here the word myth in its value neutral sense. Because you see, sometimes we use myth in a sense of untruth also. So because of the fact that, to my understanding, reality is not exhausted by logic or by reason. So far as...
So you include reality within that ambit of logic?
Yeah. No, not ambit of logic. There is reality, the sphere of reality extends beyond logic. There are spheres of reality where you cannot apply logic. Now, in logic itself, this is an aside, in logic itself, we used to have earlier two-valued logic, where statements used to be either true or false. But now we have probability logics. Now where you say that how much probability is there that a statement can be true or false. So probably you place the values at different values there. The two-valued logic is not the only value, is not the only logic now. Now exactly now in contemporary scene, there is not the logic. There are logics. So we are talking about the myth. So myth is a kind of, you see, I was thinking about it, that how different societies have created myths and how these myths have helped these societies to evolve, to conserve themselves, and this myth-making process is still going on. It is not that during this age of science, there is no scope for myth. If the science is healthy, there is always scope for myth. And these myths are still being made. And I was thinking that probably this is something instinctive with man. And probably he needs this mythosphere, if we can say that, so that he is saved from the ultraviolet rays of his repressed fears or emotions.
Is this the projection of his own mind then?
So this is one of the theories. There are various theories about the study of myth. Now, by understanding myth, we are, you see, what you asked the question, that how does this justify the myth, the story of myth, how does this justify a discipline? So we are talking about that. So the myth, when you study the myths of a society, actually you are studying the evolution of that society. You are studying the structure of that society. It helps you a lot in comprehending the social phenomena, contemporary or past, in a diachronic fashion. So it is the study of, you see, human being has concerned himself with the study of this universe, but he has also concerned himself with the study of himself. The most of the sciences, most of the books are written about human beings, about human study, human beings trying to comprehend themselves. So this is an effort on the part of human being to comprehend himself or herself.
So there are myths related to birth, death, then evolution, then covering a huge lot of spectrum of human life. So can this subject be studied under the generic name that is mythology, or there's a proper classification for that?
See, traditionally it has been used, it has been said that myth is a comprehensive term for the stories about gods, about the gods and man's relation with them. Yeah. That the supernatural element is predominant. That myths explain the natural phenomena in terms of supernatural. So this is a way of using the term. Now there is another, you see, in different, when we day-to-day fashion, when we use the term myth in our lives, in our times, in contemporary times, we use it in different senses. Let us first differentiate these senses. Sometimes we use myth for a story which is widespread but is untrue, or unsound, or erroneous. And sometimes it is used for a person or a thing who enjoys or which enjoys great prestige, based and is referred to reverentially, with admiration,
deification.
Yeah, because of popularly repeated stories. Yes. Whether fictitious or true. Iconography. And then there is the use of the word term for a conception of a thing or a person which exaggerates or idealizes the truth. So, but when we are talking in a scientific manner about in this discussion, we are not referring to these meanings. We are referring to the myth as a value-neutral term. See, firstly, let me say that if we accept for working as a working hypothesis, if we say that myths are stories that explain natural phenomena, maybe with the help of supernatural elements, or try to explain some customs, some traditions, some phenomena in nature, and this involves supernatural agents also. So this is, if we say that myth is that, then we have to differentiate it, but it has a narrative, it is a story, and in a narrative fashion it explains that phenomena. So let us differentiate it from folk tale. The function of folk tale is to present a story primarily for the sake of entertainment. And then we have the word legend or saga. So, but however imaginative and however fanciful the story may be that is narrated by a saga or legend, it has its root in the historical fact. So there is these differentiations. Now we don't get pure and simple myths. Sometimes we get mixed lot, where we are not in a position whether it's the folk tale, whether it's a legend, or whether it's a myth. But one thing I would like to say, that so far as myth is concerned, even if it has its roots in historical facts, those roots are irrelevant. This fact is irrelevant whether it is based on historical facts or not. Because the function of myth is to comprehend a phenomena that spreads over time and space, and it has not a particular limited space and time. So myth is something that explains events and that explains phenomena in a manner which cannot be tied to historical facts.
Right. So for a student to understand the very meaning of myth meaning, do we always have to transcend and overstep the genuine borders of reason and human logic if we are to understand certain riddles which otherwise cannot be deciphered?
So this is a very good question. You see, we can compare myth with art. So when you compose a poem, when you paint a painting, see, about literature we say that we are talking about quality literature. the literature is a mode of cognition. It is a mode of articulation. It is a mode of expression. And this mode of expression is probably, this mode of cognition is probably different than the mode of cognition that is based on reason. So when you translate literature into reason, something is lost. Now you don't capture each and everything.
Cannot be.
But you try to give the feel, what is there in the poem, or what is there in the story. But if you have to enjoy the beauty of the literature, you have to go to the literature itself. You cannot content with the husk. Similarly, if we say that myths are interpreted, there are different theories. Theories have been developed about the interpretation of myths, and there are a number of theories. What you pointed out, that rational comprehension of myths, the rational comprehension of myths again dates back to ancient Greeks. There was a Greek thinker whose name was Euthymides. Actually, he is credited to be the father of rationalism in so far as myths are concerned. He claimed that gods or men deified for great works. So this school has been named, christened as Euhemidism, rationalist approach.
That's a point of reconciliation between myth and reason. Meeting point between.
Trying to interpret myths rationally. And another approach is metaphorical approach. This metaphorical approach considers myths as allegory, and then tries to interpret them. Is it very close to art? But in the late 19th and 20th century, this metaphorical approach took various forms, especially in the theories of the psychologists, especially Freud and Jung. Freud discovered the significance of dream symbols, and on this basis he interpreted myths. He said that he developed a connection between dream symbols and myths. And he interpreted myths as waking man's efforts to organize and systematize the incoherent and chaotic impulses and emotions of his sleep world.
Give them a proper order.
Sleep world. And he says that patterns of the imaginative world of children, of savages, and of neurotics are similar. And these patterns are expressed in the motifs of myths. Now, you see, and he says one of these basic patterns is the Oedipus complex, which is represented in Oedipus' story, wherein the son kills the father in order to possess the mother. And when son kills the father, there ensues a sense of guilt and sin. And from this sense of guilt and sin emerges the conception of God as Father, who has to be appeased, and to whom atonement has to be made. Now you see, where from he started and he says that that this Oedipus complex has inspired the beginning not only of religion but of all ethics, art and society. So we can concede that Freud's discovery of the importance of dream symbols and their connection with the myths is very important. But again we can say that this cannot be applied to all kinds of myths. But especially Freud's theory is very illuminating so far as those myths are concerned which represent the persistent but repressed fears and emotions of human beings, and by their telling achieve a kind of catharsis.
Talking about Sigmund Freud's placing God as a father, Can we say if scriptures resort to certain myths for humans to understand that what actually the nature and form of God can be? Is religion a sublimated form of myth-making? Does it codify belief? So this is to make a very heretic statement, but for the sake of making an argument and to get an answer from an expert.
No, we cannot say that religion is
religious consciousness. Let's put it that is the consciousness of religion, a kind of myth-making that a human being finds a convenient expression in the form of that codified belief that we call as mythology.
Exactly, we cannot say that myth is, actually myth is expressed in religion and ritual also. You have said something very important, but we cannot say that the wholesale religion is myth-making. So there may be a sphere where we can say
a realm
where religion can be dubbed with myth-making, but all the aspects of religion we cannot say that they are myth-making. So exactly we are using the term, let me remind, we are again using the term in its value-neutral sense. Yes.
So that's the most important thing to be kept in mind. This is all to be taken as value-neutral. Earlier in your discussion, you talked about Greek. There's an oxymoron involved with them. On the one hand, we see Plato or Aristotle or Xenophon being trenchant critics of making myths as a channel to understand reality. That is on one side. But on the other side, Greek are known to be hyper-rationalists. Okay, but mythology is being attributed mostly to Greeks. So how can we make a point of intercession between the two?
You see, actually, the way we find myths in Greek literature, so this is a very refined and evolved form of myths. So myths were not exactly born at that time. Myths were born much earlier. And what we get in Hesiod or Homer is a very refined and evolved form of those myths which Greek primitive society had evolved thousands and thousands years earlier. And again, so far as this criticism of Plato and Aristotle is concerned about understanding the reality through the apparatus of reason, Plato was strictly against even literature, because he said that literature or art in general takes us away from the reality and it nourishes our feelings, that is the emotions, that is the lower part of our soul. But at the same time, you read his Republic. You read his other dialogues. Now, one of the criticisms Aristotle levels against him is that he is making poetry in his books.
So by denouncing poetry, he is making poetry.
He is making poetry. Now take his cave myth in Republic. That is very famous, cave myth Republic. And now there is a famous article by Derrida, Plato's Pharmacy. Now in Plato's Pharmacy, Derrida has dealt with 3 or 4 dialogues of Plato. And now there he gives you 4 or 5 interpretations of those dialogues. And now what is the point of the paper? The point of the paper is there is no single meaning, there is no single truth that Plato has captured and put before us. So there is this polysemy. Now when he is using these myths, myths carry many more meanings. As we said that myth is art. Now we were talking about Freud. Now his former disciple Jung also has given us a theory about myths. And he went beyond the mere connection between myths and symbols, myths and dream symbols. Now he says that myths are, this is very important, myths are the projection of the collective unconscious of the race. That is, they reveal the continuing psychic tendencies of society. Continuing psychic tendencies of the society are revealed by myths.
So social order can be confirmed in a way from myths?
Yeah. And he says that myths contain images. Myths contain images or archetypes. He calls them archetypes, his term. And now these archetypes or these images appear in the dreams of individuals or are expressed in the myths of societies. Now, great value of Jung's conception is that he emphasizes the dependence of all societies, whether sophisticated or primitive, on their traditional myths. Their psychological, now all the societies, whether sophisticated or primitive, are psychologically dependent upon their myths. The word I used, mythosphere, we were talking about, I say that there is a psychological need. There's an instinctive need. Now, in our society, we see that myth making, of course, that is not in the value neutral sense. We say a man in a particular situation, is born in a particular situation, does something very important, of course, but then stories are made about him or her, and he is made into a hero, he is made into an icon, and the truth is exaggerated. And that is why we say, when someone tells us something, we say it is a myth. That means we are...
Sir, here I am reminded of Friedrich Nietzsche, who believed that no knowledge is original, but knowledge is all invented. Because when some, as he puts it, animals from different planets got together, and that was the most, quote-unquote, mendacious minute of human history. And that makes one ponder on the thing that why was it that mendacious moment of human history when something happened, and that something we call as knowledge. Can we substitute that something which Friedrich Nietzsche uses for knowledge for myth?
No, not exactly. You see, what is this Nietzsche's take is this, that there is no truth. There are truths.
Okay.
There are interpretations. So we will come to that. Now we have this approach also to myths. One of the theories about the myths is that also. But Nietzsche's take is that there are only interpretations and there are no basic texts. So actually...
myths can be the part of those interpretations.
Yeah, of course, myths are interpretations. Myths are interpretations. Myths try to interpret phenomena, social phenomena, as we have said. Myths try to interpret social phenomena, as we have said. And you see, human beings are in need of myths. Human societies are in need of myths, as we have seen in the case of this Jung. Again, there is a restriction that his conception also cannot be applied to all the myths. So as we said, that there are various definitions of myth. So there are various theories of myths also. So one of the thinkers, whose name was H.J. Rose, he has written a book, a handbook of classical mythology. And in that book, he has given a very important and beautiful statement, it appeared to me. He says that myth is the result of the working of naive imagination on the facts of experience. So
there's a profound statement.
Yeah, there's a profound statement. Now, when you say that naive imagination, and this connects me with your earlier question about Greeks. So definitely Greek imagination was not naive. It was very evolved, it was very sophisticated. But the kind of, I have to point out this thing, that the kind of myths that we get in Greek literature are not in their pristine form, are not in their original form. They are in their very evolved form.
Myths give a landscape to a subject like philosophy or psychology, like you talked about Jung and Freud. Can we discuss some empirical subjects of a total scientific, technical value in the modern contemporary world, making myth as a background? Will it not be a paradox?
Exactly, it will not be a paradox, because you see, when we are trying to, so now we have the molds and we have the materials. So unless and until you give a mold to the material, you cannot talk about that material. It is formless. Now it is the mold that gives the form to that material. Now exactly, see, we have seen that there is another approach to the understanding of myths, and that is called anthropological approach. Now this anthropological approach, one of the most important names in this approach is of Bronislaw Malinowski. So this man was trained on an island of New Guinea during the World War I. And there he used his leisure time, because this was a forced leisure. So he used this forced leisure to study those islanders, and they were called Troband. True Brand tribe was there, and he studied their myths, and he published his book, Myth in Primitive Psychology, in 1926. And he discovered that there is very important connection between myths and social institutions. And he said that myths explain social customs, social beliefs, social traditions. It is a charter of social institutions. They explain the social customs. They explain certain beginnings. Now, if we have to understand a society as per Malinowski, we have to understand the myths of that society. Now, you see, this is a scientific concept. Now, you were saying, you were raising this question. Now, if we have to understand something scientifically, can we use the myths of myths for this purpose? Now, myths are molds in a way. So you are putting these things in the molds. Now, if everything gets in its mold, now there's a puzzle. Now, when you're a child, you take your child to the school for the admission. They give you a test, your child, and he has to put the figures in different holes, different shaped figures into so that it is. So this kind of help we can get from myths in order to understand contemporary phenomena. If the molds provided by myths can be of some assistance so far as the understanding of contemporary phenomena is concerned, so it is good, it is not harmful.
So you mean that we need to have some ethereal background if we want to understand some earthly facts.
Yeah.
So it was so nice to have you here and to know about some facts about mythology, but we'll be back with the second part of our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So students of geology might have heard a word like lithosphere, but students of philosophy are here with another word called mythosphere, where you cannot understand anything only on the basis of reason. We'll be back with the next part of our discussion, where we will discuss something more about this very interesting subject of mythology. Till then, thank you very much.